The rain didn't just fall that afternoon. It attacked the earth like it had something to prove, slamming against rooftops, flooding streets, and swallowing the sounds of City Hall. The sky had turned a deep, bruised gray, and the wind howled like something alive. People ran for shelter, headlights blurred into streaks, and thunder cracked so loudly it felt like the world was splitting apart. And in the middle of it all, on a narrow, forgotten sidewalk, a woman clutched a small child to her chest as their only suitcase lay tipped over in a puddle, clothes spilling out into the storm. No one stopped. No one noticed, except one man. If you believe that even the smallest act of kindness can change a life forever, take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Heartfelt Stories, because stories like this remind us that humanity still exists, even in the darkest storms. Armen had seen storms before. Life had made sure of that. But as he sat in his aging car, hands resting on the steering wheel, watching the rain blur the windshield into a moving painting of gray and silver, something about this moment felt heavier. It wasn't just a storm outside. It was a quiet storm inside him that never really went away. He had been on his way home from a long shift, his back aching, his mind tired, his heart even more so. Being a single father had carved lines into his face that no one his age should have. Every day was a careful balancing act between earning enough to survive and being present enough for the one person who mattered most in his world. His 8-year-old daughter, Meher. Meher was waiting for him at home, probably sitting by the window like she always did, watching for his headlights, her small face lighting up the moment she saw him pull in. That thought usually warmed him. Today it felt distant, because right now, something else had caught his attention. At first, it was just movement through the rain, a blur, but then the shape became clearer. A woman, soaked to the bone, struggling to hold on to a little boy who looked no older than 5. The child's face was buried in her shoulder, his tiny hands gripping her clothes, as if letting go meant disappearing entirely. Beside them, a man stood under the shelter of a building's overhang, shouting something Armen couldn't hear through the storm. But the body language was enough. Anger, finality, the kind of gestures that didn't ask for understanding. They demanded departure. And then, with one final motion, the man kicked the suitcase toward them. It slid across the wet ground, burst open, and its contents scattered like fragile pieces of a life no one cared about anymore. The woman didn't shout back. She didn't argue. She didn't even look at him again. She just stood there, holding her child tighter, as the man turned and walked away, disappearing behind a closing door. The storm swallowed the moment, but Armen couldn't. Something inside him tightened, something old and familiar. He had seen that look before. The look of someone who had just lost everything but didn't have the luxury of breaking down. Not yet. His first instinct was to look away. People told themselves stories all the time. It's not my business. Someone else will help. I have my own problems. Those thoughts came easily, like rehearsed lines. But then he thought of Meher. He thought of what it would mean if she were the one standing out there, soaked, scared, and abandoned. And just like that, the excuses stopped working. He turned off the engine. The rain hit him immediately as he stepped out of the car, cold and relentless, soaking through his shirt in seconds. Each step toward them felt heavier, not because of the water, but because he knew this moment mattered in ways he couldn't fully explain. The woman looked up when she noticed him approaching. There was fear in her eyes, sharp and immediate, the kind that came from being hurt too many times to trust easily. He stopped a few feet away, careful not to get too close, raising his hand slightly in a gesture that said he meant no harm. Her face was pale, lips trembling, but her grip on the child tightened, as if she was ready to fight the entire world if she had to. Armen glanced down at the scattered belongings, then back at her. The storm roared around them, but in that moment, everything felt strangely still. He gestured toward his car, parked just a short distance away. It wasn't much. An old vehicle with faded paint and a stubborn engine. But it was dry. It was warm. It was safe. For a second, she didn't move. Trust is a fragile thing, especially when it's been broken. And in her eyes, Armen could see the weight of hesitation. The silent question, is this another mistake? But then the child shifted in her arms, shivering uncontrollably, his small body unable to fight the cold any longer. That was enough. Slowly, cautiously, she nodded. What happened next would stay with Armen for the rest of his life. Not because it was dramatic, but because it was simple. He picked up their scattered belongings, one piece at a time, ignoring the way the rain soaked everything further. He didn't rush them. He didn't ask questions. He just helped. When they reached the car, he opened the back door, stepping aside to let them get in first. The child climbed in, still clinging to his mother, his wide eyes scanning everything with quiet fear. Armen closed the door gently and moved to the driver's seat, starting the engine. Warm air slowly began to fill the car, pushing back against the cold that had settled into their bones. For a few minutes, no one spoke. The only sounds were the rain and the soft hum of the heater. Armen stared ahead, his hand steady on the wheel, but his mind racing. He didn't know their story. He didn't know where they came from or where they were supposed to go. But he knew one thing. He couldn't just leave them like this. Because sometimes, the most shocking move isn't grand or loud or heroic. Sometimes, it's simply choosing to care when it would be easier not to. And as the storm raged outside, something quiet but powerful began to shift inside that small car. A moment of humanity, fragile and uncertain but real. Armen finally spoke, his voice calm, steady, carrying none of the judgment the world had already thrown at them. And in that moment, for the first time since the storm began, the woman allowed herself to breathe. Her name was Syra, and the child was her son, Ruin. Their story unfolded slowly, like something painful being unwrapped piece by piece. There had been promises once, and hope, and a life that felt stable enough to trust. But promises, Armen knew, were often the first things to break. By the time Syra finished speaking, the storm outside had begun to ease. But inside the car, the weight of her words lingered. Armen didn't respond immediately. Instead, he made a decision, one that would change all of their lives. He turned the car toward home. The road ahead wasn't clear. It never was. There would be challenges, questions, moments of doubt. Bringing strangers into his life wasn't simple. It wasn't safe. It wasn't logical. But it felt right. And sometimes that was enough. As the car moved through the wet streets, headlights cutting to the fading storm, something else began to emerge. Not just relief, but the faint, fragile beginning of something new. Not a perfect ending, but a second chance. And near the end of this story, if your heart has felt even a fraction of what these moments carry, take a moment to engage with this video. Because stories like this deserve to be felt, shared, and remembered. Special requests. Comment below and tell us, would you have stopped in that storm? Because the truth is, life doesn't always give us easy choices, but it does give us moments. Moments where we decide who we are. And on that stormy afternoon, one man chose kindness. And in doing so, he changed everything.